let's look at a program that uses the insert function for some different purposes. So what this program is going to do is the user will be keeping track of days that they have to work. So we'll pick a particular month, we'll say January, and then when they enter the number date, it will put it into a, now this is important, that is an ordered vector. So it's not just slapping them at the end. So if they are working days 3, 4, and 7, it'll show up as 3, 4, and 7 as opposed to in terms of the order that they put those dates in. So we will be using a vector for this. So we'll include the vector library. And now we'll need a couple things here. So vector int, we'll name it after the month that we are scheduling for. So we'll put January here. And we're going to have a second vector, days. And this is going to represent when we need it, the range of days that the user will be selecting. So if they want 7 to 10, we're going to keep those actually inside vector. We're going to have a choice between a single day or multi-day that the user is making. And in both of those cases, we'll have to keep track of a couple individual days. So day 1 and day 2. So day 1 we're going to use for both of them, and day 2 is only when we need the end of a range, for example. Okay, so we'll start with the friendly message. Your January is calendar is empty. So it tells the user that there's no data that is in the vector, which is probably a good way to start this thing off. And then we'll get started. So our options will be 1 if they want 1 day, 2 if they want a range, or 0 to quit. So we're going to put this into a loop. So as long as the do while choice does not equal 0, and we'll just kind of keep going over and over again. First thing we need here is our menu. So our menu of options here, move this up a bit. There we go. That's better. So our menu of options, we'll go cout, select an option, and then we'll put our list here, short list. So cout 1 is going to be, oops, 1, add a single day. So if they want to indicate that they are going to be working on the 5th, this is where they can do that. Cout 2, add a range of days. So this is where they'll put in like 7 to 10 or whatever their range is, and then we'll cout select an option. And we'll see in the choice here. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we will have to put the distinction between whether they're picking a single day or multiple day. So if choice is equal to 1, this will be our single day option. Else if choice is equal to 2, this is going to be our range of days option. Okay, so when we're doing a single day, the first thing that we want to do is we want to prompt the user for which day they would like to add. So cout, enter the day that you would like to schedule. And we'll see in day 1. Now, there's a couple different versions of this. So the first scenario is we could be looking at a vector that is completely empty, so nothing has been added. So in terms of no days scheduled, here's what we're going to do. We're going to put an if statement, and the vector library has a handy function to to see if something is empty or not. And it's conveniently called. So we're going to check to see if January dot empty. And this is a Boolean function that's going to return true if it's empty or false if it's not. So if this is the case, what we're going to do is we're going to take that day and we're just going to slap it on at the end of January. So we'll have January dot pushback, and then we'll put on day 1. This is the easy scenario. Now, otherwise, we have to do a couple different things if we already have days scheduled. So otherwise, we're going to do the following. So the first thing that we need to do is we have to find the insertion point. So to do that, we're going to be writing a loop that traverses the array. So int I equals 0, while I is less than January dot size. And then I plus plus. And now there's a couple different things that will be happening. The first one and the easiest one to program is like if they want to schedule the 5th and we already have a 5, we can't schedule additional work on the 5th. So this is for the day is already scheduled. So in this scenario, we're going to put an if statement. So if January I, so we're going to go through one at a time and we're going to check to see if each individual day that's scheduled is equal to the day that we're looking to schedule. If this is the case, what we're going to do is we're going to see out scheduling conflict. And we are not going to add it onto the array. Okay, and what we're going to do now is we're going to break out of the for loop because we don't want to keep looking at dates if we know that it's already scheduled. So that's the easy one to program. It's already scheduled. We say scheduling conflict, and then we break out of the loop. Otherwise, what we're going to do is we're going to schedule it for if we find a value that is larger. So this is going to be found a larger value. So imagine this scenario if we're looking to schedule the number 5 and we've got 1, 2, 4, and 7. What happens here is when we're on the 4, we're looking at the 4, we don't know if it needs to be scheduled, but as soon as we hit the 7 and we know that we didn't pass a 5, because this would have broken it out, if we hit a larger value, we know that we can schedule the 5 right before that value. So that's what we're going to program here. So in this one, else if January I is larger than day 1. So if we find a value that is larger than it, what we're going to do is we're going to insert it. So we're using the insert function for this. So January.insert. And what we need is we need to point to the position that we want it inserted. So that's going to be January.begin plus I. So we're starting from the beginning and then we're moving in I positions, and then we need to say what it is that we are inserting. So it's going to be day 1. And then similarly, we've done our work so we can break out of this. So imagine what this is going to do is this is 0, 1, 2, 3. So when I is 3, we find a larger value. And then we insert the 5 at this position. So 5 moves here, and then it bumps the 7 over just like that. Okay, So now we only have one other scenario that we could have is what if we go through the entire array and we don't find any value, we didn't find the value and we didn't find a value that's larger, but we get to the end, well, we know we can schedule it at the end. So this is reached the end of the schedule. So else if, the way we determine that is we're going to check to see if I is equal to January.size. Now we also have to put a -1 because remember, if something has 5 elements, like if something has 4 elements, this last is in position 3. So that's why we have to subtract 1 from this. So if we're at the end and we didn't encounter any of these 2 options, then what we have to do is we have to do January.insert. Now instead of January.begin, we're going to do January.end. So we're pointing to the end of the vector, and then this is where we're going to insert our day 1. Okay, so I'm going to run this program. Just check to see if we've got any errors here. Here we go. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a single day. Let's do a 5. And then we'll add a single day. Let's do a 6. We don't have that displayed yet. We're going to take care of that. But watch what happens if I add a 5. It will give me a scheduling conflict. So, and then it won't insert it. So that's going to be important here. All right. Now maybe what we'll do is we'll just get it so that it will display the schedule every time we go through. Oh, better stop. So down here at the bottom, we're going to do a display schedule. So just to do a little separation, let's do an end L to start off with, and then we'll do a little traversal array. Now, or for loop. It's so common that this is something that you're often going to be just copying and pasting from elsewhere in the program rather than have to retype it. So we're going to traverse, and every time we do, we're going to see out January, I, and then a space. And we'll finish off with a couple and else. Okay, so just to see what that's going to look like, let's do single day. We'll do what I did before, put in a 5. Single day, I'll do a 7. A single day, I'll put in a 6. You'll see that it'll put everything in, insert it into the correct position. Okay, so let's take care of our range of days. So this is, imagine they wanted to do 7 to 10 or something. So what we need to do is first, we're going to prompt them for, oops, stop this again. We're going to prompt them for what those days are. So cout, oops, I don't know what happened there. Range of days. Cout, let's do, what is the first day in the range? And we'll see in day 1. And then the second one, I want to do what is the last day in the range? And that is going to be day 2. Now, what we have to do here is we have to create the range. So the first thing that I need to do is that days vector, we are possibly reusing this a whole bunch, so we're going to clear it out. So days.clear. Clear empties the array, and also the size is 0. So it zeroes out the size and it becomes an empty array. So we'll do a for loop. Now, we're going to say if they put 7 to 10, we need to input 7, 8, 9, and 10. So we're going to have I start at day 1, the first day that we're going to insert. And then we're going to keep going while I is less than or equal to day 2, the second day or the end of the range. And then every time we go through, we're going to do a days.pushback I. So if we get 7 to 10, it'll start at 7, and it'll just keep popping those onto the back of this currently empty array over and over and over again. So now what we have to do is we have to kind of go through the same steps. So no days scheduled. So if there are no days scheduled, so if January.empty, then what we're going to do is we are going to make January become this new array. So January will become days. Easy peasy. Now, alternatively, we'll have the same 3 scenarios that we had before. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to find our insertion point, and we'll do that with the same traversal array that we've been using. So we're going to be going through the entire array, checking for a place that we can put this. Now, the first scenario is if we're going through and we find that the first day is already scheduled. So we're primarily going to be using day 1 as our indicator of where we should insert this. So if January I equals day 1, same as before, what we're going to do is we'll see out our scheduling conflict. And we'll break out of this loop. So that's identical to the way that it was before. Now, the second scenario is the same as the second scenario in the first case there. So else if January I is larger than day 1. So what we're going to do is we'll check to see if we come across a number that is larger. So I'm going to use an example similar to this. So found a larger value. So imagine what we want to do is we want to insert 4, 5, 6 into an array. And then we have 1, 3, 9, 42. So in this situation, what's going to happen is we'll keep going until we get to this 9, and we'll realize that 9 is larger than the 4. But then the other thing that we have to check is we also have to make sure that 9 is larger than the 6. Because if 9 is larger than both the beginning and the end of this, that means the entire thing can fit in here just like that. So if our number is larger than our current day, what we've got to do is we've also got to check to see if January I is also larger than day 2. So if it's larger than both of them, then we can insert it at this point. So if this is the case, then we're going to do a January.insert and the way we're going to do this is it's at January.begin plus I, and then what we have to do is we have to say what portion of the other array we're going to do here. So we're going to do days from the beginning all the way to days dot end. So it's going to insert everything from the beginning of days to the end of days into my January array. Now, otherwise, if this isn't true, then we did something like this. So imagine we had our 4, 5, 6 here. I'll put that back. And we actually had the value 5 in here already. So what would happen is we'd realize, oh, 5 is larger than 4, but we can't put 4, 5, 6 before it because 5 is not also larger than the 6 at the end. So otherwise, we have to put in our scheduling conflict. So cout scheduling conflict. Now we have to put our break here because I want it to break out of the loop, not the if statement. So it's got to show up here. Now our last scenario here is what if we get to the end of the schedule. So this is reached the end of the schedule. Okay, so else if I equals January.size -1, same as before. So if this is the case, what we're going to do is we're going to be putting it at the end. So the way we would use insert for that, so it's January.insert. January.insert. Now, we're not going to put this at January.begin. We're going to put this at January.end. And then we're going to put everything from the beginning of days, days.begin, to days.end. And then we also have to make a break here. Okay, so we'll just verify that everything is working totally fine here. And nope, I've got an error. While I is less than or equal to, oh, I put a comma here instead of a semicolon. On line 68. There we go. Okay, so now what I want to do is I'll put a couple single days in. So let's put the 4th. I want to put the 7th. I want to put the 12th. Now I want to put in a range. So I want a range of, say, from the 8th to the 10th. And what it'll do is it'll find the insertion point here and then move the 12 over. Now let's see what happens if I find a conflict. So 2, and I want to go from the 11th to the 16th. So what it'll do is it'll tell me scheduling conflict and not insert it. So this is a really good application of 2 different ways to use insert, where you're just doing a single value or potentially an entire series of values.